During an asthma attack, it felt like forever waiting for my wife to return with the medication. Suddenly, my heart just stopped. After being brought back, I found out she was at a party with the school heartthrob who had just returned from studying abroad. I developed asthma after saving her in a fire. The heartthrob handed me a contract, claiming my wife had requested it, and mocked me for relying on her. After facing death twice, I made up my mind to seek justice for myself. To celebrate my divorce, I sent a video to the relevant department. While I was having an asthma attack, I accidentally knocked over the water cup on the nightstand and struggled to call Alara. Medicine, wife. It was noisy on her end, and she spoke a bit unclearly. Just a moment, wait for me. As soon as she finished saying that, my phone died from a dead battery. I pressed my hand against my chest and struggled to make my way to the door. As soon as I opened it, I stumbled and fell. My gaze was fixed on the corner of the stairs. Alara, why aren't you here to help me? That's the last thing I thought before I lost consciousness, barely recalling fragments of the past. The sudden fire broke out, filled with screams and cries for help. By the time I rushed over from the store, the flames had already gotten out of control. I grabbed someone nearby and asked, "Where's Alara?" The person was so scared they were shaking, hurriedly pointing to the second floor, where the fire was raging the most. My heart dropped. Without wasting a moment, I picked up a metal bucket full of water and poured it all over myself, then ran straight into the inferno. Alara was my first love, and we had been close since we were kids. I once vowed to protect her for life. Now, even though my skin feels like it's burning, I choose to ignore the pain. I found Alara unconscious at the corner on the second floor. The fire was blocking the way out, so I instinctively scooped her up and took us into the nearby room to escape. Thick smoke filled the room as I took off the wet clothes and covered my mouth and nose. The usually cheerful and pretty face was now covered in blood. The smoke got thicker, nearly swallowing the entire room. I could only cover my mouth and nose with my hand, trying to ease the struggle to breathe, but it didn't help much. In the final moment before losing consciousness, I clung tightly to Alara, refusing to let go no matter what. Fortunately, the firefighters arrived just in time and rescued me. I heard someone nearby say that I was really brave for being just 16. While I was unconscious, I caught snippets of their conversation and tried hard to lift my hand to reach out to them. Suddenly, everything fell silent, and after a while, I heard my mother softly crying. That fire left me with severe asthma. I was only 16 back then. Suddenly, the memories came to a halt. When I woke up, I found myself in a hospital. Everything around me was white, and there wasn't a soul in sight. It turned out I had unconsciously crawled into the hallway, and a neighbor passing by had to rescue me. When the nurse came in to change my dressings, she mentioned that if I had been a few minutes later, I might not have made it. She kept reminding me to always carry my asthma medication. I just listened, feeling numb. So, Alara never showed up at all. My fingers dug into the bed sheets, and my thoughts were all over the place. "Don't forget to pay the bill, okay?" The nurse said that and then left. My phone wasn't nearby, so I borrowed a stranger's phone to call Alara. Just seconds after it connected, the call got dropped. I stood there, frozen, hearing that familiar male voice on the other end. After I grabbed my phone and paid, I returned home alone, and Alara still wasn't there. Her phone was already off. Exhausted, I boiled some noodles and sat at the dining table. That's when I noticed a post from Alara's good friend from 30 minutes ago. The caption says, "Lovers finally come together." I clicked on the video, and the scene made me catch my breath a few times. Alara is standing in the center, with Thaddeus, her long-lost first love, right beside her. They stare into each other's eyes, filled with longing and the memories of years apart. Suddenly, a bowl crashes to the floor, hot noodles spilling all over my legs, but I don't even feel the pain. I realized that while I was waiting for her, she was out with another guy. My hands were shaking as I held my phone, and tears started streaming down my face uncontrollably. The truth is, not everyone knew that Alara and I were already married. Back then, everyone knew Alara had a crush on Thaddeus. He was the campus heartthrob, a year older than us, and Alara was the campus beauty. They seemed like a perfect match in everyone's eyes. Thaddeus ended up studying abroad after not doing well on his college entrance exams. He told Alara that he wouldn't be coming back because of the family business, urging her to let go of her dreams about him. For a while, Alara felt completely hopeless. She cried and threw a tantrum, but eventually, She started to accept the reality. After going to college, she graduated, and just 2 years later, she rushed into marriage with me. To be honest, when she came to me proposing, I felt scared and unsure. At that moment, her expression was calm as she shared her feelings with me. The past is behind us, and now I just want to live happily with her. I really believe that. My feelings for Alara have been going strong for many years, and now I'm really happy. She mentioned wanting a private marriage, and I instantly agreed. Plus, since we've known each other's families since we were kids, we've gotten a lot of support. I used to believe that everything would turn out great. I thought we would always be together and be the closest people to each other. Now, that dream is completely shattered. But I have to admit, we did have some sweet moments after getting married. I was lost in those thoughts until I heard the door open. Alara walked in, reeking of alcohol and swaying a bit on her feet. "Hey, honey. Why are you still awake?" I looked at her silently. "Didn't I ask you to go get the medicine? Where did you go?" A hint of awkwardness appeared on her face. "I kind of forgot. I was already at the pharmacy, but then my friend texted asking to hang out, and it ended up taking a bit longer than I thought." I noticed the bag of medicine she was holding. If I hadn't seen that video on her moments, I might have actually believed her. Seeing my disbelief, she got a bit annoyed. She tossed the medicine onto the sofa and said, "I already bought the medicine, so stop throwing a tantrum. I'm going to take a shower now." I could hear the sound of water running in the bathroom. I walked over to the couch, and her phone was sitting on the coffee table. I picked it up and looked at the screen, feeling a chill run through me. It used to be our photo as the wallpaper, but she must have changed it at some point. At the top of the messages, there was a text from Thaddeus asking if she was home yet. I tried to enter the password to unlock the phone, but it said the password was wrong. I gave a wry smile, surprised that so much caution was aimed at me. Alara finished her shower quickly. When she came out, I was sitting in a corner of the couch, lost in thought. Maybe I really did look off. She walked over, rubbing her hair dry, and said in a teasing tone, "Come on, babe, don't be mad. It's just that I got back late with the medicine. I promise it won't happen again." Her words made me chuckle. "It's a bit late, you know? I almost got into trouble." She paused for a moment and then awkwardly laughed as she apologized. She mentioned that she's been sick for years and should have died long ago, so there's no need to be so dramatic about it. Noticing I was silent, she placed her hand on my arm and said, "Okay, let me make it up to you." I immediately pushed her away. "Don't come near me." She was pushed to the ground and looked up at me in disbelief. "What's wrong with you, Orion? I already apologized. What more do you want?" My gaze was dull, and a hint of self-mockery lingered in my mind as anger slowly started to rise within me. Alara stood up and pointed at me. She threw out every nasty word she could think of, accusing me of being shameless and warning me not to ask her to reconcile again. I stood there in the dark, feeling an ache in my heart, with a heavy sadness hanging in the air around me. It was clear that in Alara's mind, she never saw us as equals. I nodded, silently agreeing with what she said. Then, I turned and walked into the bedroom. Frustration bubbled up inside Alara as she struggled to keep calm. That night, sleep didn't come easy. The next morning, there was a loud knock on the door. "Orion, why aren't you up yet to make breakfast?" "I'm really hungry." Alara's tone was a mix of command and questioning. I used to make breakfast myself. When we first got married, she wasn't really into breakfast and often felt uneasy in the stomach. Because of that, I went through a ton of recipes and made sure she ate every day. I opened the door. "If you're hungry, just go buy something. Don't you have hands?" I finished speaking and walked past, heading to wash up before leaving for work. "Orion, if you dare step out that door today, we're getting a divorce." My steps paused for a moment as I looked at this person who I once loved so much, now so cold-hearted. I helplessly shut my eyes. "Fine, let's get that divorce then." When I got the message from Thaddeus that he wanted to see me, I was busy looking for a place to stay tonight. On my way to meet him, I could already guess he would insult me, and I was right. The man in front of me was dressed sharply in a tailored suit, looking far more mature and composed than the carefree guy from years ago. "Do you need something?" I asked him directly. He smiled and said he heard your company has been discussing a collaboration recently. Noticing my confused expression, he pulled out a document from his bag. He handed me an order for online marketing and mentioned that the commission could keep you busy for 5 years. He waved a few fingers in the air. I looked at that astonishing number, wondering what his real intention was. After all, we're just alumni and competitors. There was no reason for him to help me. It seemed like he caught on to my doubts. A hint of a sarcastic smile appeared on his face. Last night, Alara came to me, asking for my help to get you a promotion and a raise. Orion, I really didn't expect you to start relying on others after all these years. My mind went blank. Thaddeus's gaze lingered on me. I gripped the documents tightly, my knuckles turning almost white. To save face, I ripped up that ridiculously expensive order right in front of him. I can handle this on my own. I don't need you meddling in my affairs. Besides, Alara is my wife. Thaddeus wouldn't have any inappropriate interests, would he? After saying that, I turned and walked away. I walked a long way before finally leaning against the wall, gasping for breath. When I opened the door, Alara was sprawled on the couch, watching TV. Why did you go to find Thaddeus? I stood in the shadows, trying to keep my irritation in check. When she saw me come back, a smug look crossed her face, as if she thought I should be the one apologizing. Upon hearing my question, she waved her hand casually. It's just a friend. Let him help out. I still couldn't wrap my head around it, and my thoughts started to spiral. After we got married, I handed over almost my entire paycheck, just to make her life better. I worked hard to secure partnerships and strive for promotions and raises. Yet whenever I asked about it, she would frown. I tried to help you grab an opportunity, but you couldn't handle it and cared too much about saving face. Now, you're blaming me for it. I never needed your help. Alara, after all these years, can you honestly say you don't have other feelings for Thaddeus? As soon as I said that, her expression changed instantly. She quickly shot back, trying to hide her unease. I laughed cynically and walked inside. You went to Thaddeus's welcome home party yesterday, right? You know what happened. Alara, don't treat me like I'm clueless. Her face turned bright red, and for a moment, she couldn't say anything. After a while, she tried to reach for me, but I moved aside. Felt like all those years of effort were for nothing. In Alara's eyes, I was just a stand-in. Thaddeus didn't need her anymore, so she remembered me. Thaddeus is back, and I rushed to get closer. Alara, can you at least have some self-respect? I ruthlessly laid bare Alara's inner ugliness for us to see clearly. Let's get a divorce. We'll go to City Hall tomorrow. She wanted to explain, but I quickly slipped into the bedroom and locked the door. Let her scream outside. The light in the bedroom was dim. I lit a cigarette and sat by the window when my phone buzzed, breaking my thoughts. It was a call from my parents. I immediately realized that Alara must have gone to them to complain. As soon as I answered, my dad said in a serious tone, Orion, what's going on? Alara came to us in tears, saying you want a divorce. All these recent events had worn me out, and I just didn't feel like answering any questions. Whatever, she said, just believe whatever she tells you. Before I could brace myself for my dad's anger, I hung up. Alara fussed for a bit, but when she saw I wasn't paying her any attention, she left on her own. I thought to myself, it's fine. As long as the divorce goes smoothly tomorrow, that's all that matters. At the entrance of City Hall, I crouched in a corner, surrounded by cigarette butts. The 10th time I messaged Alara asking where she was. A supercar pulled up in front of me. Alara was wearing an outfit I had never seen before. Thaddeus had sent her. He was in the driver's seat, giving me a taunting look. There's a 1-month cooling-off period for divorce, and once the paperwork was done, I went home to pack up my things. Alara appeared out of nowhere. Where are you going? It's none of your business. I'm heading to a place without you. I spoke in a cold tone, my eyes void of any feelings. I really didn't want to engage with her anymore. Alara hurried after me. After all these years, can't you just show a little compassion? I find it really funny. Didn't she make this choice herself? Now she's acting all hurt. Who is she trying to fool? Her tone softened a bit. I didn't want to end up not being friends. Ha! Friends should understand each other? But Alara, do you really know me? I asked, emphasizing each word. I knew deep down that in Alara's eyes, I would never be as good as Thaddeus. Not ever. A few words had silenced her excuses. And stop bothering my parents. I threw that out casually as I headed to the train station. As the train began to move, I watched the city fade away behind me, and I let out a long sigh of relief. The phone buzzed with a message from Thaddeus. His tone was dripping with smugness, basically saying that after all this time, he still couldn't win Alara's heart. What a loser. I couldn't care less. He won't be able to gloat for long anyway. No one knows I have a video on my flash drive that could bring Thaddeus crashing down. The fire wasn't an accident. I've actually been a night runner since I was a kid, And the night of the fire, I just happened to be out for a run. As I walked past a patch of reeds, I suddenly spotted a familiar figure. Because of my feelings for Ilara, I had always viewed Thaddeus as a rival. The moment he spoke, I knew it was him. Thaddeus had his back to me, and in front of him stood a middle-aged man in his 30s. "Are you all set with whatever caused the fire?" Thaddeus's voice had a sneakiness that didn't match his age. I instinctively pulled out my phone and started recording. The guy nodded and said not to worry. "It's probably already started." Thaddeus gave a slight nod, holding a cigarette between his fingers. "If this doesn't work out, I'm done for. I can't let my dad find out I've lost money trading futures. If this works out, the insurance I get will be enough to cover this gap. Once everything's done, don't forget to leave me some benefits." The conversation kept going, and I could hardly believe it. I stepped back a bit. Soon, I noticed a glow in the distance. It came from the direction of the mansion. Right now, Ilara was having a party with her friends. I pushed myself to run faster than I ever had, desperate to go even quicker. In the end, I ignored everyone's warnings and found Ilara in a corner, unconscious. In that moment, my only thought was to protect her, completely forgetting about my own safety. The thick smoke surrounded me, almost swallowing me whole. It was my first taste of the terrifying feeling of suffocation. Despite everything, I never let go of covering Ilara's mouth and nose. I curled up, coughing violently, my whole body shaking. Fear and pain left deep scars in my young heart. I felt the threat of death looming, and everything began to blur before my eyes. Just a little longer, hold on a bit more. I have to survive. I want to see Ilara in her wedding dress, to witness her living a happy life. I leaned on the last bit of my will to survive until help arrived. Memories flashed through my mind like a carousel. I rested against the car window, watching countless scenes rush by. I thought it was time to say goodbye to the past. I organized that video and, after careful consideration, sent it to the relevant department's email. It feels like a heavy stone that's been weighing on my heart for ages has finally dropped, and I can't shake off this newfound sense of relief. It's almost midnight at the train station. This place is truly a beautiful spot, surrounded by mountains and clear waters. I've rented a farmhouse here and spent half the day turning it into my little home. I pull out my phone to text my parents and let them know I've arrived safely. I blocked Ilara's countless missed calls. I lay back on the lounge chair in the yard, closing my eyes to soak in the fresh air. Just as I was enjoying the peace, suddenly, a soccer ball flew over the fence and hit me right on the forehead. That had some force. I picked up the ball, feeling annoyed, and marched out to the street. Just then, I bumped into a woman who looked genuinely sorry. Knocking on the door, "Sorry, I didn't mean to be too rough and accidentally hit you." The person in front of me might not be exceptionally stunning, but she has a certain charm. I found out her name is Serafina, and she's a female teacher here doing volunteer work. Just a moment ago, she was playing soccer with the students. Seeing her like that really eased my irritation. She scratched her head a bit shyly and mentioned that it was her first time playing soccer. I turned my head and asked, "Do you want me to teach you?" She looked pleasantly surprised. The kids seemed excited. My soccer skills aren't the best, but I was on the college team, so teaching some basics won't be an issue. Serafina shared a bit about my background with the kids. They didn't hesitate to accept. Instead, they clapped enthusiastically. Suddenly, I found myself as the only gym teacher at this elementary school. Life was easy and enjoyable, almost making me forget why I had come here in the first place. Then Ilara showed up again and turned my peaceful routine upside down. On the phone, she was crying hard. That's when I realized something had happened to Thaddeus. The video caught the attention of the authorities. Once it was discovered, someone reached out to me, and after I explained everything, they didn't follow up. The investigation moved quickly. On the day the truth came out, Thaddeus was arrested by the police at the club, right in the middle of a gathering. The Thaddeus family immediately released a statement, trying to distance themselves from him. At the same time, the related video was leaked. Suddenly, the once respected Thaddeus became the target of everyone's blame. Relatives who lost family members in the fire gathered at the police station, demanding tough justice for the killer. Not wanting to hear Ilara's crying anymore, the call was cut off without hesitation. The situation had spiraled beyond official control. Protests erupted everywhere. At the same time, anger bubbled up inside me. Survivors of the fire had captured video of me rushing into the flames to save Ilara, risking my life. Soon, Discussions about love and life surrounding the fire flooded the internet. I scrolled through the comments with a smile, and one comment caught my eye. It had risen to the top. I wonder how the two main characters are doing now. I chuckled and blocked the comment. When Serafina came to find me, she seemed a bit distracted. After she messed up the lesson plan for the third time, I couldn't hold back any longer and asked her what was going on. She hesitated for a while, then finally pulled out her phone and showed it to me. Is this you desperately trying to save your girlfriend in this video? I nodded with a smile. So, you have a girlfriend? Her voice sounded a bit disappointed. So I handed her the tea I had just brewed. My ex-wife. We haven't been together for a long time. I shared everything. Seeing the curiosity in her eyes, Serafina's expression shifted from envy to anger, and then to heartache. I shrugged it off. After all, who hasn't loved a few people when they were young? She rested her chin on her hand and said, if I had met you back then, I would have treasured you. As soon as she finished speaking, we fell into a long silence. She awkwardly touched her nose, signaling me not to take it to heart. I looked at her and smiled. The month of calm passed by quickly. I took a leave from school and bought a ticket for that evening's train. Where are you going? Just as I was packing my things, Serafina suddenly came in. She looked really anxious, her hands clenching the edges of her clothes. I packed the last piece of clothing. It's time to go back and finalize the divorce. The month's deadline is up, and I also need to check in on my parents. She clearly let out a sigh of relief. The sooner you go, the sooner you'll be back, she said, then added, the kids are going to miss you. When I saw Alara again, she had lost quite a bit of weight. Her father kept her locked up at home, not letting her go out, waiting for my return. Alara's parents looked guilty, constantly bowing their heads to apologize. This was just between us, and I still held a lot of respect for my elders. I shared everything I was thinking, and when they saw how determined I was, they stopped talking and quietly turned away. When Alara saw me, a flicker of emotion crossed her usually calm eyes. Orion. Her voice was a bit hoarse as she ran toward me. She almost tripped several times because her steps were unsteady. I had never seen Alara looking so flustered. In my memories, she always seemed so poised and untouchable. But now she looked worn out, like someone who had been through a rough, emotional storm. She called out repeatedly, her voice full of tears. Orion, you're back. Orion, I'm so sorry. Can you promise not to leave this time? I took a few steps back, trying to put some space between us. When she realized I was only back to get a divorce, her steps faltered, her eyelashes fluttered slightly, and her eyes showed a pleading look, as if she was silently asking, please don't leave me, okay? I felt a sharp sting in my heart, a sadness that took my breath away. Looking at the person I've loved for so many years, my face remained oddly calm, though my hands trembled slightly in a hidden corner. I thought to myself, maybe it's best to just let it go. Orion, don't be soft-hearted anymore. Seeing my determination, Alara suddenly dropped to her knees in front of me. Don't get a divorce? Don't you love me? Orion, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Let's start fresh and live well together. Okay? She reached out to grab my pants, but I pushed her away. She doesn't know how much I've been through these years. I really can't love anymore. With tears in her eyes, she looked at me and said, I'm sorry. I really didn't know it was you who saved me back then. Orion, it wasn't until you left that I realized I can't live without you. Just look at these scars. In the past month, I've missed you so much I've nearly gone crazy. I've even had thoughts about ending it all a few times. She said this while showing me the scars on her arm. I listened quietly, my dark eyes fixed on her, and before I knew it, a few tears slipped down my cheeks. But Alara, we can't go back now. I was the one who made the mistake. I shouldn't have loved you, and I definitely shouldn't have married you. Maybe over the years we only had a bit of kinship and I was just too naive. Shaking her head, tears uncontrollably soaked her collar. No, that's not true. There is love between us. You've always given in for me, and to protect me you've gone through a lot of hardships. I remember it all. I looked down and whispered to her, you've even put your life on the line to save me. You got asthma because of me. After we got married, you made me breakfast every day. All of that shows love. I crouched down and looked her straight in the eyes. Yes, it's all my love. But what about you, Alara? What have you done for me? Alara froze, completely speechless. She wasn't wrong. There was love involved. But the truth is, all the love and effort were one-sided, all coming from me. To Alara, It doesn't matter what I like to eat or what I'm allergic to. My birthday and hobbies are totally insignificant to her. I've been by her side for over a decade, and that passionate love has long been wasted by her. Alara, this is the last time I'm calling you that. Let's meet at City Hall tomorrow at 9 in the morning. I can't quite remember how I left Alara's house that day. Dragging a suitcase down the street, I wandered aimlessly. Alara's mom hurried after me, asking if there was really no chance to make things right. I bowed to her, grateful for her care and support over the years. But at this moment, I didn't want anything. This was my second time in front of City Hall, sitting down in the same spot, smoking one cigarette after another. People streamed by, some couples dreaming of marriage, while others looked like they had run out of love. I laughed to myself, thinking I'd soon end up like the latter. I waited at the City Hall entrance for a long time, but Alara never showed up. Just then, someone passing by mentioned that a woman was live-streaming a jump. She seemed pretty attractive too. Hearing that, a bad feeling crept into my heart. I instinctively grabbed my phone and saw Alara on the rooftop, holding her phone up high. Her expression was calm, almost like a lifeless puppet, standing at the edge of the tall building. The words on the screen read, "You don't love me anymore. My life has no meaning." Suddenly, the chat room exploded with comments, and the popularity surged by dozens of views in an instant. Someone kindly advised to stay optimistic. The journey is still long. Others harshly labeled as a jerk. Then there were those who quickly recognized her as the one from the fire video. I held my phone. A wave of regret washed over me for knowing Alara. Just then, Alara's mom called, her voice trembling with tears, asking me to come over. "Alara wants to see me." The firefighters looked at me like I was their last hope. "Sir, please hurry up there." I made my way to the rooftop and immediately spotted Alara with one foot already hanging off the edge. "Alara," I called out to her. She paused for a moment and turned around with surprise. "Orion, I knew you'd come back." I moved in carefully, raising my hand to gesture for her to come down, so we could talk properly. "I want you to remarry me." She looked at me, her eyes full of hope. I sighed. Over the years, Alara hadn't changed. She was still so innocent, thinking that she could get what she wanted just by making a fuss. With a wry smile, she said she wanted to keep me around, but she didn't know how. I knew Alara too well. I could tell right away that she wasn't really wanting to leap but was waiting for me to show myself. I stood there, still and quiet, watching her as she kept asking me over and over what it would take for her to let me go. She laughed and cried at the same time. "If I let you go, who will let me go? I know you're a good person. You asked if I jumped today, would you feel guilty forever?" I shook my head in silence. From start to finish, I did everything I could. I loved Alara, and I have no regrets about that. I was betrayed, and I chose to walk away. I take responsibility for my decision. I think we all need to learn to grow and accept loss. Eventually, it all became too much, and I slowly squatted down, holding my head and crying deeply. The firefighters nearby saw what was happening and quickly rushed in to pull her down. Among the chaos of the crowd, Alara's cries pierced through, completely draining my last bit of patience. In the end, Alara was taken to City Hall by her parents. The moment the red seal was stamped, I finally felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Alara wanted to run after me, crying and yelling, accusing me of being heartless. Once I got into the cab, I put her complaints out of my mind. Serafina called to ask when I'd be back. I glanced out the window and smiled. Just a moment. Wait for me. On the day Thaddeus was sentenced to death for arson and murder, the sky opened up, pouring rain like it was mourning the victims. His family had already found a new heir and struck his name from the family tree. I returned to the village to carry on as the gym teacher. As for Alara, I only heard about her later on. Her whole family moved abroad. After she jumped, it sparked a lot of stuff that netizens started digging into, including all the controversies with Thaddeus. Alara's parents were harassed and insulted every day, so they finally decided to relocate. What a shame for that kid. The mother sighed on the other end of the phone. I smiled and said, "It's all in the past, so try not to think about it anymore." In my second year at the village, Serafina confessed her feelings to me. She didn't seem to care about my past at all. I was really happy to accept, and I started to embrace a new way of life. We worked together, contributing to the education of the only school in the area.